Hey, future editing Damashi here, and I've got some things to say. I was very close to just axing this video, because discourse around Sonic Frontiers has just been intolerable. But I've invested so much time into this video that just throwing it away when I could have been using that time for other things like the Sonic Battle review feels like a waste. Sunk cost fallacy, I know. All I ask is that you guys be chill. I don't care if you are excited about Oh my god, I just said Forces. I meant Frontiers. I don't care if you're excited about Frontiers, angry, somewhere in between. Just be chill. Know that everything I say in this video is in service of, hopefully, making Sonic Frontiers a better game. And whether you agree or disagree, please just be chill. Without further ado, I'll let past Damashi take it from here. Welcome to the dream, folks. I'm your host Damashi, and we're back to analyze and critique the new Sonic Frontiers Combat premiere. And I actually have a lot of nice and negative things to say, unlike the exploration video, which was mostly negative. Sega, if you're watching this, please learn from this. Never market your games like this again. The way you spread out information about this game has just left so many people angry and or confused. First impressions are important, and that exploration video was a horrendous first impression. I have not loved a 3D Sonic game since Sonic Generations, which was over a decade ago, and the first premiere left an awful taste in my mouth. If you're going to segment aspects of your game like this, at the very least provide audio commentary explaining what's going on, and why you built it this way. Having watched the combat trailer a few times, the way Sonic moves around in the exploration video now makes way more sense. I have a few problems with it, but I can at least see the threads of why you may have designed this game in this way. Once the month of Sonic Frontiers footage is over, I'll be giving my full thoughts on the game as we know it in a long-form video. Without further ado, let's talk about that combat.
IGN First continues on with yet another look at...
Hey everybody, look! Sonic has long quills! What does this mean? Nothing. It means nothing. Stop acting like it means something.
Sonic Frontiers gameplay, this time focusing on combat. Sonic is up against an all-new set of baddies, some of which are among the most massive bosses we've ever seen in a Sonic game. Fortunately, Sonic's got some new tricks up his sleeve. Make sure to stick with IGN all throughout June because we've got a full hands-on preview and interviews from the developers in store. For now though, enjoy the combat of Sonic Frontiers.
First, really like the idea behind this new enemy, which from what I understand is named Bubble. The idea is that there is an actual entity controlling that mass of spears at the center, kind of like the artificial chaos from Sonic Adventure 2 and Shadow the Hedgehog. If you can hit it, that's an instant KO. The problem stems from this thing, at least in the showcase, only having one attack, and that's a static ability where its entire body has a hitbox. It'd be nice if it threw its massive bubbles, and if you dodged at the right time, you'll see the controlling entity and have a window where you can strike it, or use the spin drive while it's using its static ability to interrupt it without getting hurt, exposing its weak point that way. Give it more attacks like that expose its weak point, and give Sonic a reason to keep moving. A one-trick pony doesn't work in a combat system like this. Whenever Sonic gets hit, it's the exact same faceplant falling over animation, or him standing in place as rings fall out like nothing happened, which doesn't feel or look right. In Sonic Unleashed, Sonic had multiple reeling animations as both Sonic and the Werehog based on what he's hit by, and different stagger durations and recovery frames. And these really should be on display here. When Sonic touches that static field, he should have a twitchy, shocked expression while standing in place covered in electricity. The sound designers really brought their A game here. I saw others complimenting it on Twitter, but it bears repeating again. Those are some meaty impact sounds that are very satisfying to listen to. Unfortunately, and you are going to hear me say this a lot throughout this video, the animation on these attacks looks terrible. There's a bit of squash and stretch here, which is good, but the animation feels stiff and lifeless. Sonic shouldn't be throwing punches and kicks in a straight line. These should be big, sweeping aerial strikes with cool wind effects surrounding his limbs, and more pronounced hit sparks on contact. Smear effects to help emphasize the speed, which is something you guys did very well in Sonic Battle sprite work. And the animation from each attack should naturally flow into the next. In this footage, each strike just snaps to the next, which feels really jarring. The special move Sonic does here, which is very reminiscent of Knights' Drill Dash, is awesome. Again, I'm cool with you stealing more moves from other characters to make Sonic more interesting. No one will fight you on this. There's tons of visual flair, emphasizes Sonic's speed, it's great stuff. There's just one problem, and if you were paying attention to the footage, it likely immediately took you out of how cool this attack is. There's a jump cut, and then suddenly Sonic is far away. There's no in-between animation frames leading to this attack, which will give your players whiplash, and takes away from what would otherwise be a really cool attack. If Sonic struck a pose midair, and then started fading out like an afterimage and reappeared with particle effects, and then went into that animation, this move would be incredible, but no one will be able to appreciate it when they are still reeling from how sudden and jarring the lack of transition frames are. Later in the showcase, we see that Sonic can attack again as soon as the animation ends, but I'd love it if they took it one step further and let you cancel out of the animation at any time using the stop or dodge/quick step maneuver. Another cool special attack animation, good use of squash and stretch, and visual effects. More of this and smear effects on his normals, please. If I had one complaint, it's that this move's a little too similar to the previous special attack. Sonic dips away and comes back for a huge strike. It's a little redundant, unless this attack has other properties to it that aren't immediately obvious from the showcase. That makes it different. Everyone that has seen this spin attack has said it, and I'm gonna say it again. This attack looks awful. It looks like they forgot to animate him. Sonic should be spinning around in his Sonic Advance trick pose, or in his ball form, something, literally anything, other than what you are doing here. Also, again, these cinematic camera angles on these special moves are cool and all, but if the player can't cancel out of them with a stop or a dodge, it needs to be changed so that you can do so. Anytime you take away agency from the player is a problem. The most you can get away with is a few frames. Any more than that, and your combat will feel stiff and unresponsive. I'm currently replaying Sonic Battle for a review I'm doing, and this is a huge problem in that game. The inability to jump cancel any of the melee strikes in that game makes combat feel way too stiff. I'm going to be comparing this game's combat to Metal Gear Rising: Revengeance a lot, because this game's combat reminds me of it a lot. In that game, there isn't all that much you can do with each character. Yeah, there's like 12 minutes worth of animations for each character's attacks, but I never felt like I had to use most of them. I mainly just stuck to the same 3 or 4 combos for the entire game with Raiden, but the combat feels incredibly snappy and satisfying because you can cancel almost any animation into a jump, a dodge, a parry, or other movement abilities like the ninja run at any time. So hopefully you can do the same in Sonic Frontiers in the final game. It's been a while since I played with the Werehog, but I remember it having a similar problem of feeling too sluggish, along with not enough enemy variety. While the Werehog is beautifully animated, there is very little reason to do more than just a few moves, but more on this later. Yowza wowza. You know, when I said I wanted the Sonic Wave to return in a Sonic game, Sonic Team heard that and went, "I got you, fam." This attack looks awesome, and they show later in the showcase that you can cancel it at any time with what appears to be any move. Great stuff. If I had to compare it to something, it would be that one move from Gunslinger Dante where he just goes ham with his guns. Except Sonic can do it in any position in 3D space where Dante has to stay on the ground. Great addition to Sonic's moveset, and gives him something to rival Shadow's Chaos Spear. Finally, Sonic isn't lame in comparison to his friends. Going to talk about it now, but the enemy variety in this trailer itself isn't bad. There should definitely be about maybe 10 to 15 more unique non-boss enemy types in the final game, with their own unique abilities, attack patterns, and strategies. As I said, this is part of what made the Werehoggun fun. The enemy that we are about to see is very much an elite nuke. It can take a fair bit of punishment, maybe even a bit too much. I definitely cut this type's health down a fair bit, make it more aggressive as well. It took about 4 spin cycles to kill this thing, which is a bit too much, cut it down to about 2. On top of that, there is nothing rushing the player in a one-on-one scenario with this enemy. It just sits there for quite a while until you do the spin cycle. Now, it does have an attack where it throws its shell at you, but it takes far too long for it to decide to do that. This enemy needs to have other enemies backing it up, and it needs attacks it can do while it's guarding to encourage the player to decide between doing the spin cycle as soon as possible or dealing with the adds. Otherwise, it's just a slow-paced damage sponge turtling enemy, which no one likes in these types of games. Imagine if the scissor enemies in Devil May Cry just sat there and decided they were only going to make themselves vulnerable every, I don't know, 10 to 15 seconds or so, and you couldn't instantly kill them. That's what this enemy feels like. There we see what looked like the blue tornado from Sonic Heroes, which is cool. I'm glad they are bringing this move back. It doesn't get the shell to disappear, but in an actual combat scenario versus multiple adds, I could see you using this to remove the guard bot from play while you deal with the other adds. But again, this would only be useful if this enemy could still attack you while the shield is up, and was actually threatening. As for the attack animation itself, I hope in the final game they give it some more visual flair. If Sonic does this move, there should be an actual tornado visual lifting the enemy in the air. Otherwise, it will feel too lifeless. I meant to talk about it before, but the spin cycle could also use some extra work. Sonic should move way faster when he does it. He comes off as just way too slow for an attack that's supposed to emphasize speed. And there should be after images similar to Sonic Advance 2 and Lost World while he performs the technique. Now that I realize that Sonic Frontiers is an open-world spectacle fighter, it makes sense that Sonic would have a top speed for non-boost and boost. However, that just makes the boost panels feel even more awkward and unnecessary than they've ever been. Again, we've talked about this. It doesn't feel good when you take away control from the player in scripted sequences like this, especially if you do it too much or too often. Trust that your player isn't a brain-dead moron. They will get to where they need to go so long as there is proper, well-done tutorialization of the game's mechanics and systems. I'm not one of those people that thinks every Sonic game has to be momentum-based, but it is never acceptable to rip control away from the player like this, and proper weight and control are still things that are important even if it's not a traditional Sonic platformer, and the terrain and the environment needs to react in a way that the player expects. In other words, don't force me to do something, make me want to do something. Instead of a dash panel, place an object here that makes me want to boost. Another issue with traversal in this game is that it comes off as way too bland, and there isn't enough input from the player even if they are covering a lot of ground. I mentioned it in the previous Sonic Frontiers video, but this is very much a Superman Returns flight issue. Flying around as Superman, even if it's fast, feels dull in comparison to Spider-Man in Spider-Man 2 and Batman in the Batman Arkham games, because there is nothing for the player to do or think about other than go. There's a lot to think about for Spider-Man. Is there a building in range for me to swing on? If there is, what angles of movement will I have to work with once I connect? And lastly, making sure I let go of my webs at just the right moment to either maintain my current speed or increase it. Batman has a similar thing going for him. Is there something I can grapple on? If there is, am I far enough away to activate the grapnel boost? Once I hit the boost, is there enough space in regards to the environment that I can dive bomb to get more height and increase my speed? These are principles that are also found in the spin dash in Sonic Adventure 1 and 2, and the boost and drift mechanics in Sonic Unleashed and Generations. and part of why we don't like how the boost is implemented in Sonic Forces. Forces level design was more linear than any boost game that came before it, on top of there being no drift, meaning that all corners were automated and done for the player. Hopefully in Frontiers we'll have the Generations drift back as well as new travel tools to keep the player engaged. Again, Sonic doesn't have to have momentum. He doesn't have to have the spin dash. But if you take these things away, something as comparable and engaging, or even more so, needs to take its place. I can't believe I'm saying this because I hate that game, but you could look at how DC Universe Online handled super speed for inspiration. I actually changed my movement style from flight to super speed because of just how much more engaging it was to explore Gotham and Metropolis with it. I love the quick witch time dodge on a perfect dodge. That's awesome. And I'm happy a feature like this made it into the game. And I love that you can effectively cancel a dodge into an attack. There should also be visual effects, motion blur, blue spark, etc. layered on the dodge to make it more visually interesting. And I think enemies were a little too frail here as opposed to how beefy the previous enemies were. You could stand up their health just a tad, lower the health of the others. Also, again, make these enemies more aggressive and dangerous, since just wailing on things that aren't a threat is never fun. They should also have more wheeling animations and recover and stagger frames, because while Sonic's attacks are connecting, they don't seem all that bothered. And non-bosses Sonic is wailing on should not be able to strike back at him unless it's a specific armored move in their toolset to make the player more worried about canceling their attacks with dodge. It's awesome that you can spin cycle multiple enemies at once, but it's time to talk about an issue I've had with this entire showcase. There's barely any ground combat. It was all aerial based, which is a huge problem, and will be a large factor in why people will find this game's combat stale and repetitive. We should be going ground to air, air to ground multiple times in a combat encounter. I know Sonic has ground attacks, we've seen them in the previous preview, and they didn't look good for the same reason his air normals don't look good. Sonic's limbs are too short, his model is too small, he attacks in a straight line. There is no motion blur, no smear effects to make these strikes come alive. The homing attack is too powerful. In Sonic and the Black Knight, the homing attack was nerfed to put more emphasis on his new sword moves. And the same needs to be done here. The homing attack should be a tool for platforming, and for closing the distance between enemies, but its damage should be minimal. Otherwise, there's nothing stopping you from just mashing it. It should be Sonic's equivalent to Dante's trickster-style teleport. Sonic said it himself in the first movie. His legs are classified as lethal weapons, and he should use them like they are. Imagine, if you will, instead of the terrible punching and kicking animations his ground attacks use, you saw Sonic do massive sweeping ground kicks with blue flashes, wind effects, tornadoes, dust, and breakdancing like Raiden does in MGR and Sonic does in Sonic Battle. In fact, you could reuse a lot of MGR's basic control scheme for this game if you aren't already, and it would make perfect sense. Square for light attack, triangle for heavy, X to jump, double attack, X to homing attack, forward and square for a grounded homing attack / spin dash, acting as your stinger, R2 for ninja run / boost, so on and so forth. I think the combat designers could learn a lot on how to improve the game's combat by playing through Metal Gear Rising: Revengeance and DMC5 back to back. Part of what made SA2 and Unleashed and mini spectacle fighters like Bayonetta and Devil May Cry more fun was the ranking system. In SA2, the ranking system took a relatively basic combat style of point, lock on, and shoot for Eggman's mech stages, and turned them into something special that required thought and skill on the player's end to perform well in. This game's combat would really benefit from a DMC5 or Batman Arkham-style rating system that rewards you for performing different actions with more experience points and moves that can only be performed at certain rating levels, and disincentivizes you using the same action over and over again. What the player did at the start, homing attack, punch, kick, special move into the same thing again, should barely give you above a C. using the Sonic Wind, attack twice like they do here, shouldn't even get you above Dismal. Alright, we are at our first Titan enemy. First thing off the bat, remove the boost auras from this thing. If you are confident in your game, you will let the player actively climb the enemy by themselves, like Capcom did for the Gilgamesh boss in DMC5. Meant to mention it earlier, but the stomp should act as Sonic's equivalent of a helm splitter, dragging enemies from the air to the ground so Sonic can continue his combos from there. Maybe as you upgrade it, its area of effect becomes wider, and looks more like the Fire Stomp from Secret Rings, but blue and wind effects instead of flames, so it matches Sonic's aesthetic better. This is a moment where the faceplant animation is appropriate. There's a bit of cool gameplay story integration you could implement here. The first time you destroy a limb, Sonic faceplants. The second time he lands, he doesn't faceplant, but he's a bit haggard, and he has to hype himself back up for a couple of frames before he goes again. After the final limb, he lands with style and grace, maybe does a bow, and every time he fights that enemy going forward, his falling animation is more stylish because he's confident and it's not a threat to him anymore. I like that the red aura pushes you back, but this feels like a pointless endeavor if there are no enemies around to capitalize on Sonic's hindered mobility. Again, you need to populate this world with enemies and things to do. These enemies on their own aren't very interesting. They need more things they can do, and they need backup enemies that synergize with what they do. Imagine how much of a non-issue the Hammer Badniks in Sonic Heroes would be if you always fought just one, and only that enemy every time it showed up. Your power-type character would chew through it in seconds, but they almost always made sure to support the enemy with other things to make it more of a threat, like another Hammer Badnik with an alternating attack pattern, or a Hammer Badnik with a helmet that covers its only weak point so you have to knock it off first. Spin cycling the legs to get more opportunities to hit it is an awesome mechanic, but they should take it a step further. In MGR, you can parry Ray's legs to get the chance to blade mode its guns, so that it has less weaponry to shoot at you with. And in DMC5, you can knock over Gilgamesh to expose its weak point on the ground for a period of time. It would be awesome if you could damage 2 feet, causing it to fall over so that you don't even have to run up the legs. The option is still there if that's what the player wants to do, but the choice is theirs. The red gate circling their weak point is cool looking, I guess, but feels pointless because of how strong Sonic's aerial options are compared to his ground options, on top of Sonic just easily jumping over the red gates. Now, if Sonic's ground options were stronger, and all the weak points were supported by flying enemies, then we would have a really cool mini-boss encounter. That'll be it for me. This combat premiere shows that the game has heaps of untapped potential, but the game needs more time to cook to make these ideas come to fruition. That first premiere really soured my mood, but this gave me hope that eventually this will be an incredible experience, but I have zero faith they can manage that if it comes out this year. It has the potential to be both one of the best 3D Sonic games and one of the coolest spectacle fighters, right up there with DMC5 and Metal Gear Rising: Revengeance. I hope you enjoyed this video, and if you did, please like, comment, and subscribe, as well as share the video around, and maybe point it Sega's way, because I desperately want to see modern Sonic succeed. He hasn't had a W in over a decade. In the meantime, I'm going to keep working on the Sonic Battle review, and streaming regularly on my Twitch, still playing some Pokemon Reborn, and Dissidia Final Fantasy Opera Omnia. Until next time.